What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Sam Houston Sports Talk podcast. Joining me, Luke, our co-host, is not going to be here today due to work, but we're not going to stop us from putting out content because today we got a special guest, Ryan Andersen. He runs, I guess you call it, it's a YouTube and Twitter account, the Dairy Raid. You can follow him. Link will be in the description on the YouTube video. But Ryan, thank you for joining us. Can you just I didn't know how exactly to introduce you because I don't want to ruin any official titles you may have, and then we're already off to a bad start in this interview. But why don't you tell the people about who you are, what you do?
Well, I first and foremost, I'm a football coach, born and raised in Wisconsin, grew up a Wisconsin fan all my life. And so you would think my coaching kind of I don't know where my focus is on the heavy run game and power football, good old fashioned, the way Wisconsin did it. But I have been a spread offense air raid coach for the past 10 or so years. So when Wisconsin hired Phil Longo to be their offensive coordinator, I kind of started posting stuff and putting stuff up more to kind of dispel, I guess, myths about the air raid and how it could work at Wisconsin, the myths behind the spread offense and all that kind of stuff. It kind of started there where it was more focused just on the air raid offense, and then we just kind of, as the last 18 months or so have gone on, it's kind of expanded to offensive theory and general football in general. So basically taking some of the more intricacies of modern college football and making it a little bit easier for people to digest.
So, kind of what interests you about the air raid, and you mentioned the myths. Can you go a little bit more into that? So maybe there's somebody that's could be watching and listening right now that may have those same ideas what they think what the air raid offense contains. That's not true.
Yeah, I think for me, what initially drew me to the air raid, it was I was looking kind of for offenses that could expand my passing game without overcomplicating things. I think a lot of your modern West Coast offense and stuff like that, you have all these, the terminology can get so bogged down and the moving parts can get so bogged down. And what drew me to especially the Mike Leach branch of the air raid was just the simple idea of stressing a defense vertically and horizontally and using the route structure to create space and forcing defenses to defend the entire field at all times. That's what initially drew me to the air raid. And then as I kind of got into it, you really realize how simple is not the right word, but I can't think of a better one. It's these core concepts, small group of core concepts, and you can base your entire offense around it. You can base your entire offense. A good air raid coach will have 7 plays, 7 pass concepts, couple run concept, and they will tell you that's all they need. And air raid is almost like, well, like when I grew up, it was like the wing T. Everyone was like, we can run 8 plays and you have all the answers right here, no matter what happens. Air raid's kind of the same way. And then but that also gets, into some of the myths where it's just chuck and duck. It's put the foot in the ground, throw it up in the air, and we're going to throw the ball 75 times a game. And sure, that happened with Mike Leach. That happened with Hal Mumme, but it's more, how would I say, it's less about how you're getting the ball in space. It's just getting it in space. So yeah, they threw the ball 75 times a game because you allowed me to throw the ball 75 times a game. You didn't adjust your defense. When they went to 5 foot splits back in the day and the defensive line wouldn't adjust, quarterback could just sit back there all day and pick things apart. And it's the beautiful simplicity of the air raid. And now as we're going kind of forward and you're seeing air raid coaches or quarterbacks finally having success in the NFL, you're getting that little bit of pro sensibility into the air raid game. So it's almost coming full circle.
Yeah, it's crazy. You mentioned Leach because Longo became an air raid offense like student basically because of Mike Leach and because Leach was able to he said something about how he was able to put it into a way that he himself could understand and that he could teach it. And it and that's the one thing with being a coach is like you could have all the answers right in front of you, but if you can't find a way to teach it and communicate it to your assistants, your players, especially your quarterback, again, even if you have all the answers right in front of you, it could all go downhill pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And, with so much of one of the ideas with the air raid is like Hal Mummy, they don't teach coverage. They don't teach quarterbacks to read coverage. It's a simple yes or no game. Is receiver one open? Yes. Throw him the football. He's not. Okay, go to receiver two. It's there is so much of football that is so complicated, so many things going on at the same time. When you can dumb it down, again, it sounds so bad when I say it that way, but it's true. When you simplify it to that point, it really can make a difficult game that much easier if you execute. And that can maybe lead into some of the issues Longo had at Wisconsin.
Ryan Andersen joining us here on Sam Houston Sports Talk. All right, let's go to Longo's version of the air raid. You can probably communicate it better than I would, because I ultimately found you because I wanted to put together a video of some sort trying to explain better Longo's offense, because it's he says like, yeah, we're gonna throw the football, but we're not gonna be. It's not like we're not gonna run the football. They're gonna run the football whenever it sees fit. Just and so it's kind of, I've never heard of this term of the air raid called the dairy raid. Can you then that's what the kind of air raid that Longo runs, it seems like. Can you explain to the audience what exactly that means?
Yeah, for me, the air raid, you have two different kind of ways you can call yourself an air raid offense. You either adhere to the core principles that Hal Mumme and Mike Leach put together, those same base six plays, and that's all you run. You run the same two formations over and over again. That's one branch of the air raid offense. But then you also have the idea of the air raid is about getting athletes in space and stressing defenses sideline to sideline and goal line to goal line. Longo falls more into that second category. Well, sure, he will run your staple air raid concepts of the crossing routes and the stick routes and the verticals and stuff like that, but he incorporates the run game. He relies on the run. If you're not going to take away the run game, he's gonna take it. Or if you have a quarterback who can't handle it, he'll have to rely on the run game. It's about getting athletes in space. And if your running back is the best athlete, or if your quarterback is the best athlete, we want to get him in space. And I think that's where Longo differentiates from that part of the air raid. He also relies a lot on RPOs and building passing games off of the run game. So, towards the end, I kind of started calling him air raid adjacent. I mean, if you ask Hal Mumme, is this the air raid? He'd say no. But if you ask anybody who's not them, they say, yeah, I can see why you're calling this air raid. And so it's in the middle there. It's if air raid excites you and you like to hear the term, great. You're going to see a lot of things you like. If that concerns you, call it the power spread. Call it the hybrid spread, like Urban Meyer used to run back in the day. It's got a little bit of everything.
And you've went ahead and watched some film on Sam Houston last year. More particularly, you saw a lot of Hunter Watson, dual threat QB out of Iowa Western Community College, won a national championship with the Reviers over there, and then came to Sam Houston, won the starting job, led them to a 10-win season, won the New Orleans Bowl. He just did it was a lot of running around for him. I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's a really good runner. Do you think that Watson can adjust to this system?
I think so. I think the running ability that he had, we could have sorely used last year at Wisconsin, because we had, his run game is the same. It's the zone read based run game that so many college teams run these days. But our quarterback, for the most point last year, Braden Locke, refused to run, and either refused to run or was told not to run or whatever. But not having him as part of that run game really affected the how strong the run game could be, was something that Wisconsin's normally good at. We just, for the first time in a decade, hadn't had those NFL caliber All-American running backs, and amazing how not good your offense is when you don't have those backs in the backfield. So we didn't scheme open uh, the run game with the QB. Hunter, I think, has that ability. And watching some of the passes he made last year, I think he's going to be fine in the RPO and the intermediate passing game. His accuracy on the outside and deep probably leaves a little bit to be desired, but that's maybe also why he brought maybe Metoyer with him from Wisconsin, because that kid was bred to play in the Longo system. So healthy competition there. Got the young guy right behind him. Um, might bring the best out of Hunter overall.
Yeah, you mentioned Braden Locke. I mean, it was it was also the fact that y'all lost Tyler Van Dyke to
Yeah.
the season. I forgot what injury it was that sidelined him for the rest of the year. But we don't need to go too much into that. Receiver play wise, I was telling people like, hey, we got pretty lucky that two guys stayed at least. Quavez Humphreys, number 7, if you saw him on film, and Michael Phoenix,
Yep.
number 4, because they seem like guys that could really fit this system. And the thing is like people don't realize when you go down to the nitty gritty details. Yes, the wide receivers are wide receivers, but they all have a certain fit.
Yeah. And with how Longo runs his system, he has a left and a right receiver. And I kind of watching those two, you could kind of see that Phoenix might be a little more of in his system the right wide receiver, the little more take a little bit more off the top, a little quicker, a little more after the catch kind of guy. And and I'm sorry, I'm terrible with the names, but the other guy I have it written down in my notes, which I can't see right now. He's your typical boundary left receiver, where he's going to be your possession guy. He's going to be your sticks. He's going to run your hitches. He's going to run your slants, and you got that nice combination there. And then the transfer you have coming in from Arizona State,
Yeah, Caleb
he
Black.
he looks like he could live in Longo's system because he loves slot receivers. He said at Wisconsin, there's two things he loves: his wife, his kids, and slot receivers. And I'm looking at both of those slots. One of them could look really let the Kale kid. He looks like he reminds me of what Trech Kekahuna could have done at Wisconsin. Speed, shifty, run him up the seam, put him on a screen, stuff like that. That type. And then we had a guy, Will Pauling, who just lived over the middle of the ball. And if you can get some slots who can sit over the middle of the ball, can run meshes, can run crossing routes, that's one going to take a lot of pressure off the quarterback. It's going to take some pressure off the run game, but it's really going to fit to what Longo wants to do long term.
What about offensive line play? 'Cause offensive line has been kind of a topic of like just around not real. I mean, at times it was really good, especially against Texas State late in that game, that comeback that Sam Houston made last year and the H Town Showdown. But it just seemed at times it just felt like they were getting exposed at points. How can the off with how fast paced Longo's offense is, can this help the offensive line, or could it more hurt it, or could it just be a nice little middle road?
I think, that was one thing as I was watching some film, I was kind of wondering, he's like, I got to ask, is the offensive line not that good, or is the quarterback that jumpy that he takes off? So we're kind of found it was a little bit of both. And, a lot of Longo's passing concepts are tied to the drop of the quarterback. So if your quarterback can get quick feet in the ground and can get through his progression, that shouldn't be much of an issue. He's not going to be doing 5, 7 steps drops out of gun. I don't think that's his game, and I don't think that's what the offense is being built for. But they'll work quick game, and they'll work. Longo works a lot with play action, keeping the tight end in, running split flow, helping in protection. Uh, I think watching a lot of Watson last year, he did a lot of rolling out. I think they'll do that. I think they'll do a lot of screens. Um, Again, offensive line was kind of an issue at Wisconsin too. And our problem was we were going from playing in our refrigerator box, keeping everything within 6 inches of the middle of the field, and just plunging everything upfield to now we're putting these 300 pounders in space. And we had a lot of problem with that. So at least your returning offensive linemen, they come from a system that is not much different in terms of blocking schemes. So the learning curve should be lessened. And if the learning curve is lessened, then hopefully through reps, they can improve.
Brian Anderson of the Dairy Raid Twitter/X account and YouTube channel joining us here on Sam Houston Sports Talk. Running back room was pretty gutted last year. We're bringing in guys like Alton McCaskill, Elijah Green, Shaden Porter, and a couple of other guys. How important is the running? You say slot receivers are very important, but what about the running? What about the running back room? Is that especially in a Longo's version of the air raid?
Well, I mean, if you've got it, because he's not going to do as much design QB run, like watching some of the film, like they just ran straight QB sweep, snap the ball, 100 runs to the side. They're not, I don't think they're going to do that quite as much this year. They're not going to run design like QB power. So you need a back that is going to at least keep the defense honest. And if you can spread the defense out by formation, that's one thing. But Longo ran a lot of power and a lot of outside zone. I think looking at kind of how the backs are built, maybe running a little more outside zone, working them a little more sideline to sideline will help. But what will hurt is something again that we had problems with last year is if you have running backs who are indecisive. It's got to be put your foot in the ground and go. And if you don't have that, then you're going to have issues. And we saw that, especially at the beginning of last season, where we had Ches Malusi, who was one of our better running backs from the previous few years, injury prone guy, broke his leg partway through the season last year, decided to come back, and he lost a step, and he just pitter pattered in the gap and stuff like that. We had a transfer running back come in from Oklahoma, and he ran out of gas. So depth will be a good thing, but you just need a guy who can put his foot in the ground and go. And if you got that, you should be okay.
Lastly, kind of on the offensive part of things, sometimes the quarterback's best friend in tough situations, the tight ends. Just how important is that room? Because we had Elijah Sohn, number 19. If you saw him when you saw him on film, he was there and he was a staple there. We got guys like Fernando Garza III. We got Rayfield Lawton from Mississippi State. Thomas Jewett, who I'm pretty intrigued about to see. Austin Smith. Just where how do tight ends fit in his system?
They're important. And again, another thing that we struggled with at Wisconsin last year, he used them quite a lot at North Carolina. I mean, and he runs 11 personnel, three receivers, and a tight end as his base personnel package the whole game. And so with a tight end, you're looking for a guy who can run up the seam, who if you have a guy you can detach in the formation and play out in the slot, it's even better. Um, and he's typically, his tight ends are typically in that 6'3", 240-pound, almost kind of H-back style. Wisconsin last year, we had typical Wisconsin tight ends who are 6'5", 250 pounds. And then we had a converted fullback and who was like 6 foot, 260 pounds, something like that. So we didn't get a lot. I think we had like 12 catches from the tight ends last year, not for lack of trying, but athletes in space. If you got a big body who can run up a seam and you have a big body who can come across the formation and get in the flat, they can get involved. And you're gonna see multiple tight end sets, short yardage, but yeah, at least one tight end should be on the field most of the time.
We'll get into more of Longo's time in Wisconsin in just a second, but kind of we're starting to now get into like the area where people are a little concerned about, not on the offensive side but the defensive side. And the defense last year for Sam Houston was really good. There were at times they carried the offense, especially when Watson was hurt, especially after that Western Kentucky game. If you I don't know if you saw the scores from last year, there were some wonky games to say the least.
Yeah.
Just where the offense could not get going whatsoever. But defensively, lost a lot of guys. A lot of them went to UNT with Skylar Cassidy. A couple of other guys transferred out. Our main defensive end, Chris Murray, transferred to Auburn. Um, and a couple of other guys went elsewhere. And they brought in Freddie Autry Lindsay, who was at NC State, an assistant, I believe. I can't remember his exact title, but he brings a nickel defense, a base nickel defense. Of course, I'm sure they'll adjust on the fly, whatever kind of personnel the offense they're facing runs. How can Longo's offense affect the defense positively and negatively? Positively, of course, scoring the points for them.
It's yeah, it's interesting. It's first thing that Longo, I'm actually surprised he wanted to take a head coaching job. And maybe I'm hoping he's learned from interacting with head coaches as he's been a coordinator. Um, Air raid head coaches sometimes have a bad reputation of not caring about defense and not being physical at practice, not tackling a lot at practice, lacking some discipline on defense in practice because, well, the offense is going to score all the points. I Judging by Longo's personality, I don't think he's like that. At least what we learned at Wisconsin. Um, the issues you're going to find with Longo's offense, it's high tempo, and it can be in a situation where if they go three and out, they're taking 12 seconds off the clock, and the defense is going right back out there. So if the offense can click, especially early, be ball control, you can be ball control in the air raid. It will definitely help the defense, especially with the changes in the clock rules where the clock doesn't stop on first downs anymore and the clock just keeps running. So he can help there, but where he's going to hurt is if the offense doesn't click and you're just three and out punt, defense is on the field. Say the defense goes out, we saw this a lot of Wisconsin where three and out defense would go on the field. They'd stay on the field, bend, don't break. Offense gets the ball back, three and out punt. And now your offense has run 6 plays and your defense has run 25. So that's what he's got to avoid. He's got to avoid the pitfalls of the high-paced offense by having some ball control to his offense, but then also as being a head coach, just being mindful of the defense and making sure the defense is taken care of on the practice field.
Basically, you kind of have to put the same kind of guys, but like on your offense, on your defense, just athletes galore, like guys that
Yeah.
stretch themselves across the field. And I think a very important detail as well that this defense has brought in this year, what they were able to, because they hired Longo late in December officially. They didn't necessarily get the start to the portal that they wanted to. But I think they just made do what they could get out there. Whether it's going to JUCO ranking, JUCO FCS levels, and you got some FBS guys too, but they brought in veterans, and I think that's going to be pretty important guys that have been in the game for a very long time.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you got a transfer from Wisconsin and Jace Arnold. I assume he's still there. He was a
Yes.
solid player. He was one of those guys that we always heard of. Okay, it's gonna be his turn. He's gonna be the guy. He's gonna be the guy. And we ended up having another transfer that just stuck. We had our number one corner, Ricardo Hallman, just be a rock out there, and Jace Fall, talented kid. And it's just about giving the defense opportunities and making the defense feel like they're part of the plan. I don't. What would hurt is really going to hurt Longo is if he falls into the trap that a lot of offensive minded head coaches do, where they don't pay attention to the defense. He can't be Steve Spurrier. Like he doesn't need to be there in the meetings and nudging the defensive coordinator, but being a staff and working together to make sure the defense is taken care of is going to be really important for him.
Ryan Anderson joining us here on Samuelson Sports Talk. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. Longo's time in Wisconsin. Luke Fickell, of course, was hired, and then he brings in Phil Longo. Fickell, he Cincinnati. He was at Cincinnati beforehand, correct? If I remember
Yeah.
correctly. Yeah, he was Cincinnati with the other Bearcats out there, except they don't spell it with a K, spell it with a C. But I like to think ours is the correct way. Cats with the K. But kind of talk about the, I guess, the timeline from your perspective, right when Longo was officially hired to be Wisconsin's offensive coordinator.
I think Wisconsin fans, I think we are very much not
I,
used to things being exciting,
I was about to
being
say
very
passionate.
so. Well, yeah, I mean, we have it, but so I think we were all surprised that first thing that Jim Leonard wasn't to hire as head coach because he's a Wisconsin guy, which is important. The most important thing for a Wisconsin fan is that your coaches are from Wisconsin. Strike one against Luke Fickell. So when Luke Fickell got hired, it's like after we got through that shock, everyone's like, "Oh, he's just going to bring in his offensive coordinator, Gino Guidugli from Cincinnati, who, okay, he's okay. He replaced Mike Denbrook, who ended up going to LSU and who really took the program to the playoffs, but he's boring, but it's fine. We'll take him." And I think the timeline kind of worked out where Guidugli was a candidate for the Cincinnati head coach job, and he wasn't in a position to give a yes or a no. And out of the blue, Phil Longo was mentioned. And again, we're thinking as Wisconsin fans, we're thinking retreads. We're thinking a running back coach who was at Wisconsin 10 years ago. We're thinking about boring hires. And so Phil Longo coming in, running to a Wisconsin fan, a completely different offense really changed things. It got us excited. And then also got a very large contingent of the Wisconsin base, what we call the sweater vests, the grumpy old men who sit at the 50-yard line with their sweater vests on and can't be happy about anything. This guy isn't a Wisconsin guy. Where's the fullback? We're not going to run the ball enough. And that's where kind of, the fan base was really divided early. And a lot of people were excited. A lot of people were cautious. And then we hit spring ball and see the spring game nationally televised on the Big Ten network. And Tanner Mordecai goes out there and throws 4 interceptions, and the offense looks terrible. And then kind of the question marks really started to fly. And I don't think it really ever got much better for Longo. He never won the hearts back. There were some good games. He kind of, there was some luck issues with injuries. Obviously, Braden Locke ended up starting like 16 games over the last 2 seasons. Not ideal. And it really affected how Longo's offense worked. But I don't think it necessarily started good to begin with.
Yeah, the first video that I came across, it's kind of how I found you, because I was doing research. Like, I was going through the YouTube algorithm, just finding whatever I could find, and I found your video. I'll leave the link in the description for those that want to watch, because you go more you go very in depth. But you went through the top five fails in the Phil Longo system. Yeah, number one, system too dependent on above average QB play. Number two, poor receiver play due to bad system fits. Number three, the wrong guy was hired for the offensive line to coach them. Number four, believing in the system too much to see the flaws. And five, which was the most interesting part of this all, the Phil Longo, Luke Fickell dynamic. Kind of, you don't have to go through every single one of them in detail, but um, it's just, I said this personally, for me, it just felt like a marriage that was destined to fail from the beginning.
I think once we got into it, that basically was it. It was a really bad matchup of hardware and software. And, with the quarterbacks, you can't have an offense that is dependent on the passing game with below average quarterbacks. You just can't have it. And it's not necessarily his fault. We have these two other transfers in Tyler Van Dyke and Tanner Mordecai, who were supposed to elevate the system. That didn't happen. Uh, we had receivers who just the air raid's all about feel. And it's about finding soft spots in the defense and sitting down. We had a group of receivers who were the type of receivers who just needed to be drawn a treasure map. Okay, you need to take 10 steps and you need to run on this particular angle and you need to go to this spot and stop. They needed things to be very exact. We didn't have guys who had feel. Offensive line coach, the 2023's offensive line coach, Jack McNell Jr., he just didn't seem interested in teaching. He's an older coach. He's been coaching for 30 something years, and players loved him. He was a good recruiter. The recruiting class he brought in 2024 was fantastic, but the players just didn't get any better. So he ended up being reassigned in the athletic department last season. They brought in a new offensive line coach, infinitely better in AJ Blazik from Vanderbilt. Offensive line is in much better shape now. But I think the big one is we said it was the dynamic with Luke Fickell. There was times where Luke would be asked the questions like, why isn't this working in the offense? Or why did you do this? And a lot of times Luke was like, I have no idea. We'll have to look into it. It really seemed like they communicated. And then going into 2024, there was issues with running back rotations. Phil Longo wanted to use more backs and use them more specialized, more by committee. And Luke Fickell wanted an every down back. And there was a kind of a fight. It never came out as a fight, but you could tell it kind of went that way. They fought between each other on that. And then you started just towards the end of the season, you heard a lot of when Longo would give a press conference, it'd be like, well, I'm here at the behest of Luke Fickell. Our offense is a part of Luke Fickell's system. And to me, and I'd love to talk to Phil, even though no way he'd talk ill will of Luke Fickell, but it sounded like he kind of gave up. Like, all right, I'm going to do what you told me to do, even though it's not working. Now, Phil Longo, the offense wasn't working much either, and he wasn't doing much to change it. He was kind of doing the same things over and over again, and it wasn't working. But they just didn't fit. Longo didn't fit Wisconsin, and the offense didn't fit what the players we had and what we can get at Wisconsin. And it was a swing for the fences that missed.
All right, so there was a cut there. It's going to be pretty obvious for those that are watching it on YouTube. On Spotify, it's not that obvious, and thus I just pointed something out that you don't care about. But either way, we continue on with Ryan Andersen of the Dairy Raid. You can find him on Twitter or X, and also on YouTube. His podcast is on there. You can listen to his stuff and film breakdowns as well. Pretty interesting stuff. But we were talking about continue talking about Fickell and Longo dynamic. Just could you also point out faults that Longo also had? I mean, it's easy for us Sam Houston fans like, oh, if the coach just wasn't meddling in the offense, then Longo probably would have been different. Which his time in Wisconsin could have been different. Which it's true. It could be true, but there are also other things that could be true at the same time.
For sure. I think he was too married to his system. It's like Coach Boone in Remember the Titans. He runs the same plays over and over again, like Novocaine, give it time, always works. We kind of had a feeling with Longo, that's kind of how he saw his offense. And it's like, it's still not working the way that you want it. We need to make adjustments. We need to use different people. As like, we just need to execute better. And I think there was at times Wisconsin fans in the media would get annoyed with him because he's so laid back and almost soft spoken. With the way you look at him, you think he's a Marines drill sergeant, but he's kind of a laid back kind of guy. And he never seemed to have a sense of urgency. It's like, that's how we're going to fix it. We're going to make things better. It's going to be fine. And it kind of didn't end up getting that way. Another area that we were slightly concerned with was for a QB centric offense. He kind of found his guy and then, okay, we're done recruiting now. And we're not maybe getting the best quarterbacks that we can get. We're getting a quarterback that fits the system. Now, maybe Matt Toyer, the kid that he brought with him, He's one of the highest rated QBs that Wisconsin's ever brought in. He was the type of guy. But also another guy that ended up following him, Landon Locke, were like, could could we have done a little bit better? Was he really going to be the only quarterback we're going to take in 2025? He had the kid that he was looking to recruit in the 2026 cycle that he wasn't even getting D1 looks, and is like, okay, we're going to settle on this kid from Ohio. That this is all we're going to settle on. And then as soon as Longo is fired, Fickle stopped returning the kids' uh, phone calls, and I think he's at Bowling Green or something now. And in turn, we ended up upgrading to from a Landon Locke to Carter Smith, a 4-star out of Florida, and we moved on to a 4-star kid from California after this mock kid. So Longo is very much system fit, and he's going to find guys who fit his system. And maybe that doesn't quite reach the level of talent that you would expect. Now, he has good recruiting ties in Texas. He brought players to Wisconsin from Texas that we would never have a chance to get. I think he's going to thrive. He's going to be able to find system fits for him at Sam Houston that will also compete at the highest levels of Conference USA, et cetera, without having to um, really stretch his recruiting skills. I think he's going to find the right guys, but maybe in the Big Ten, he's settled a little bit.
So if you were to choose what had a big part, is it more on Longo, or was it more of Fickle trying to meddle in? Of course, and different perspectives. Like, of course, like I
Yeah.
said earlier, we wish we could have Longo or Fickle talk about what happened. We're not going to have the answers to everything. We could only wish we were a fly on the wall of the meeting rooms of what went down. But as a guy that covers, watches Wisconsin football, but also coaches this game, what would your opinion be? Like, whose more fault it was? If someone had to, you know,
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the numbers, Phil Longo succeeded at every place but Wisconsin. And that would lead you to believe that, Wisconsin factors were more the problem than Phil Longo. I just think at the end of the day, Phil Longo didn't match what Wisconsin had. Wisconsin didn't match how his coaching style is, how his offense was. And that's kind of a non-answer way to say that everybody's to blame, but nobody's to blame. Um, and I think that's where it is. I think Luke Fickell is very much a CEO style head coach, and he wants to have a hand in everything. I think Phil Longo had spent all those years at North Carolina where Mac Brown didn't care about the offense and just like, yeah, go do your thing. And it worked there. And maybe that's why Phil Longo turned down FBS offensive coordinator jobs and decided, no, I'm going to be a head coach in a place where he has alumni support and where he's been before. So everyone has a spot to blame, but I just think it's a big mismatch of hardware and software that we're probably both better that the marriage has ended. We can go off beat. We can break up being friends and leave it at that.
yeah, and the thing is like that Wisconsin defense was not that bad. I mean, they held the number one team in the country in Oregon to 16 points, and I mean that game was ultimately Longo's last game. He was like go the next day, so this system he could thrive with his offense, and the defense may not be affected that much. I mean, I was looking at his time in Ole Miss and his time in North Carolina. I mean, at Ole Miss, 2018 was his 2018 was his last year. I mean, that offense was 30th in the country in scoring, 33.9 points per game, but the defense gave up 36.2 points per game. That was of course and the thing is with that his time in Ole Miss from 17 to 18, he it was Matt Luke's first 2 years, and it was the same. It was the same things, like nearly like in 17, his first year, 32.8 points per game, but the defense gave up 34.6 points per game. And you look at North Carolina, his time there, it was kind of the same thing. I think that's why when people see that it's going to affect the defense. But then he went to Wisconsin, and the defense was pretty good for the most for all intents and purposes. Do you think though, with him coming to Sam Houston as the head honcho, do you think that he can succeed in Huntsville, Texas?
I think so. I think his if we look at it just from an offensive point of view, he's going to have a lot more advantages. And in a place where he already knows that he can get kids that play his system. Um, he hasn't been a head coach in a very long time. And so it's going to be interesting to see Phil Longo, the head coach, and Phil Longo, how much he's so used to kind of being by himself. We saw this a lot of Wisconsin last year, where it really didn't seem like he wanted much input from the assistant coaches, and why we've also had, we've had offensive position coaches leave Wisconsin during his time there. That he was always kind of on his own, and I mean he's literally the guy signaling in the plays, and so to see him change from that dynamic where he's on his island to now he's in charge of everything, it's fascinating, and I'm going to be watching just for that fact, just to see how things go. But I think he's in a situation where he can succeed. And it's just, I hope he's learned from his last 2 years at Wisconsin, that maybe gave him a little bit of humility that maybe he didn't have at North Carolina, for example.
I didn't want. I also forgot to mention this. You said that Fickle had already hired some if not a lot of the offensive staff before Longo was officially brought on.
Yeah, I mean, the wide receiver coach was already hired before he was there. The tight end coach ended up being hired before Longo was there. Obviously, Longo ended up being the quarterback coach and the offensive coordinator. The only one that I believe wasn't hired at that point was the offensive line coach. And I think that was part of the package deal, that he brought his offensive line coach with him from North Carolina, and they came together. So I'm pretty sure most of the offensive staff was in place. And it's what made me think that, okay, they're gonna have Cincinnati coaches come in, that like the wide receiver coach was his assistant head coach slash wide receiver coach. He's like, okay, now they're going to bring in his offensive coordinator to be the offensive coordinator. And he ended up his offense coordinator at Cincinnati ended up coming to Wisconsin anyways for about a week as the tight end coach before he became the quarterback coach at uh, Notre Dame. And he's actually the guy that we thought when Longo was fired, we said, okay, now they're going to hire Gaduli. Now he's going to be the offensive coordinator, and they got Jeff Grimes from Kansas instead. So yeah, it's interesting where Fickle's head went on that.
Did is Fickle had what kind of offense did Fickle run in Cincinnati? I can't. Is it sort of the air raid, or is it more of like more spread than anything?
It was. I mean, if you look at LSU, it's that kind of power spread. It's the same. I mean, literally LSU up until the last 2 years, where their offense coordinator is now at Notre Dame, power spread. So quick game, screens, push the ball downfield, run the ball, be physical. Um, and so again, that's why we kind of thought as Wisconsin fans that Longo was really a big surprise, because we were hoping that we were going to get a modernized offense. And for me, literally, it's just running more shotgun and spreading things out a little bit more. I would have been happy. But to go from Paul Chris to Phil Longo was a massive surprise.
Yeah, and another reason why I said that, I mean, just point blank, like, oh, it didn't work out in Wisconsin because of traditionally it's ground and pound. Melvin, like,
Hmm.
I remember watching Melvin Gordon when he was
Yeah.
at Wisconsin, and you had Russell Wilson, who was that guy. Like, I mean, it's just it seemed like at the end of the day it was just a big culture shock for Wisconsin fans. But you seemed like a guy that was pretty excited when Longo came in, and then just at the end of the day, this didn't work out. But hopefully, and for both sides, for Fickle, Wisconsin, Fickle and Wisconsin fans, and Phil Longo and Sam Houston fans, that this was kind of this is kind of like a big like a thing that happened to where both sides can do their best because I don't know, it seems like it feels like if it feels like it for Fickle, he might be sort of on the hot seat this season, and if things don't if things end up being the same way, he could unfortunately for him like find himself out, and then people are probably going to look more back on when Longo was there, like, okay, maybe this wasn't necessarily Longo's fault that things didn't work out, but we'll see.
I yeah, I think, Luke Fickle came to Wisconsin at absolutely the worst time because and it's not Fickle's fault. Fickle was chosen to be the guy to navigate Wisconsin through the new college football of the transfer portal, NIL, and stuff like that. I Wisconsin fans hate me if I say this, but if it was Paul Christ, I mean, we would be a borderline MAC school right now. And so Luke Fickle is taking a lot of, heat for things that are out of his control in a new Big Ten. And where, back in the day, hell, 3 years ago, you could pretty much pencil in 7 wins for Wisconsin because we're going to play a MAC school, a Sun Belt school, an FCS team, and then we'd get 4 to 5 wins from 3-win Big Ten teams, and then we got to find a way to beat Nebraska, Iowa, or Michigan State. We got to win 2 out of the 3 of those, and we go to the Big Ten championship game. That doesn't happen anymore. And like you see right now, if you look at Wisconsin's schedule this year, it is insane. And Luke Fickle is getting blamed for that. I think Phil, and who knows how that ended up being his fault. But I think this year they made the course correction offensively. The guy that they brought in uses words like fullback and run the ball, and it's making people happy again. And Phil Longo is in Texas, where if he says air raid, people are happy.
Yeah.
They know what the air raid means. He's amongst his people, and I think everyone's going to be happy in the end of it.
See, y'all face off against Miami, Ohio, go Red Hawks, and then you take on our fellow Conference USA counterpart in Middle Tennessee. Then y'all go to Tuscaloosa, yeah, for a morning game against Alabama, and then this will be a game I watched since because Billy Edwards Jr. is projected to be y'all starter, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
so I'm gonna watch that Maryland game for sure. Then you're on the road at Michigan. Then you're home two straight. You're at home 2 straight games against Iowa, Ohio State. Uh, so that oh man, that last 4 game stretches, yeah, that's pretty brutal. That's a
October is
I,
just nuts. And
November, late October and early November, excuse me. But then it
yeah,
seems like it could be a pretty nice run with y'all's toughest in those last 3 games. Toughest matchup I would say is against Illinois. I don't really know how Indiana and Minnesota improved. I know Minnesota just extended Fleming, so yeah,
yeah.
fun.
And
Y'all got an
it's
interesting schedule.
Illinois is going to be tough. Indiana is, I mean, India went to the playoffs last year, and the Big Ten is not what the Big Ten used to be. I mean, Wisconsin grew fat and happy and beating 2-win Indiana teams 5 years ago. And now Indiana is a playoff team. And now Illinois is a playoff team. And Iowa is a good team. And we went 17 years in a row or whatever it was, beating Minnesota. And now Minnesota is back even with football's changed. And unfortunately, Luke Fickle kind of got caught in the middle of it. And Phil Longo got caught in the middle of it. And yeah, it's been rough.
Yeah. And then, for us, just, I don't know if you looked at our schedule, but at least our non-con games. I mean, the first game is honestly a very big test. Week 0 Conference USA game against Western Kentucky. Then you come back. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, but we're not playing in our Stadium this year because our press box
Okay.
got tore down. We're going to be playing at Shell Energy Stadium, the home of the Houston Dynamo of the MLS. So it's 40 minutes down south in downtown Houston. So that's going to be interesting for us this year. For me, it'll be an easier drive, but for it'll be interesting to say the least because they'll be practicing up at Bowers, but then playing their home games in Houston. I mean, see, you got UNLV, you got Hawaii. They're going to Hawaii, and then 2 weeks later, um, they're at Austin in DKR against the Longhorns, and then we go to Oregon State to Corvallis for a 9 p.m. Central Time start, and then of course Conference USA schedule.
Yeah.
So for what and to end things here, what would you have to say to Sam Houston fans that August is literally a few weeks away. Fall camp starts in a few weeks for a lot of teams as we get closer. Just what if you were to say one or two things or so? What would you say to Sam Houston fans?
I mean, simply put, offensively, if you get above average quarterback play or above mediocre, don't even have to be above average, above mediocre, you're going to be okay. It's a sound system. It's about getting playmakers in space. I think you got some. I think you got receivers that fit the system. And I think the offense will be fine. I think Longo fits the culture, the recruiting, the conference well. I will be very interested to see, and it's why I'm going to watch is Phil Longo as a head coach. That's a big mystery because I don't know Phil Longo as a head coach. I know him as the really extremely laid back guy at the press conference, and that will be really interesting to see. But if there is a place to build his type of offense, his type of culture, it's Texas. It's where the air raid is. It's where the air raid has taken its deepest roots. He knows he can get kids there, and you just listen to him talk. He sounds like a guy I'd like to play for, and just laid back. And I think it's gonna work well. I think players are gonna love him.
Ryan, I appreciate you joining us here. Just lay out where people can find you.
Yeah. Anywhere as you look for the Dairy Raid, YouTube, Twitter. I have a Substack, which is basically just a place where I put my YouTube links. But focusing mostly on Wisconsin football, but getting into a little bit of the X's and O's of college football in general, and particularly the spread offense and stuff like that. So if you're into the nerdy, the niche inside of the niche that is college football contact, I'm your type of guy.
All right, you heard it from the man himself. Those links will be in the description. Go check him out. Ryan, appreciate you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Be sure y'all like and subscribe. Follow us on Twitter/X, the Sam Houston Sports Talk. Follow us on Spotify for audio only podcast. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us once again, Ryan. And for those out there listening and watching, as always, eat 'em up, cats.